The sun was setting over Vraxis 7, painting the desert sky in shades of purple and orange. The mining colony sat like a metal island in an ocean of red sand. Daehyun wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the plasma cutter in his hand. Another long day of fixing broken equipment was finally ending. He was 17 years old, but his eyes looked older. 2 years ago, his parents died in a mining accident deep underground. Now it was just him and his little sister Hyerin. She was 12 and full of energy that Daehyun sometimes envied. He had become quiet after their parents died. Words felt heavy in his mouth these days. The evening shift was changing. Workers from different alien species walked through the main corridor. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked almost human but with strange-colored skin. Daehyun had grown up seeing aliens. They were normal to him now. "Daehyun," a small voice called out. He turned and saw Hyerin running toward him. Her dark hair was tied in a messy ponytail, and she had a bright smile on her face. Behind her walked a group of other workers, mostly humans and a few smaller alien species. "How was your day?" she asked, falling into step beside him. "Same as always," Daehyun said. "Fixed 3 cooling units and replaced some wiring in Section 7. "Boring," Hyerin teased. "I learned about crystal formation in school today. Did you know that the minerals we mine here take thousands of years to form?" Daehyun smiled a little. His sister's curiosity reminded him of their mother. "That's interesting." They walked together toward the residential section. The colony was not huge, but it housed about 3,000 beings. Humans were a minority here. Most of the workers were from species that had been exploring space for much longer than humans. That was when the alarm started screaming. The sound was sharp and loud, cutting through the evening air like a knife. Red lights began flashing along the walls. Daehyun's body went tense immediately. His hand tightened around the plasma cutter he was still carrying. "Warning, perimeter breach in Section 4. All personnel evacuate to safe zones. Warning, perimeter breach." People started running. Panic spread fast through the corridor. Daehyun grabbed Hyerin's hand and tried to pull her toward the nearest shelter door. But there were too many people pushing and shoving. The crowd separated them. "Daehyun," Hyerin's voice was scared now. He pushed through bodies trying to reach her. Then he heard a sound that made his blood turn cold. It was a roar, deep and hungry. It echoed through the metal walls of the colony. The crowd broke apart like water hitting a rock. People scattered in every direction. And there, at the end of the corridor, Daehyun saw it. The Rakthor stood nearly 3 meters tall. Its body was covered in thick armored plates that looked like dark stone. It had 6 powerful legs, each ending in claws that scraped against the metal floor. Its head was massive, with rows of teeth and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. Saliva dripped from its mouth, and Daehyun could see the venomous tips of its claws glistening. The beast had broken through the fence somehow. It was inside the colony, and it was looking directly at the group of workers near the wall. Hyerin was among them. Time seemed to slow down. Daehyun saw his sister frozen in fear. He saw the Rakthor lowering its head, preparing to charge. He saw other people running away, abandoning those who were too slow. His legs moved before his brain could think. Daehyun ran toward the beast, not away from it. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, to hide, to survive. But Hyerin was there, his little sister, the only family he had left in the universe. He positioned himself between the Rakthor and the group. His plasma cutter felt like a toy in his hand. It was meant for cutting metal, not fighting predators. But it was all he had. The Rakthor noticed him, its yellow eyes fixed on this small human who dared to stand in its way. The beast tilted its head, almost curious. Nothing stood between a Rakthor and its prey. Nothing was that stupid. Daehyun's heart was beating so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hands were shaking. Fear was drowning him from the inside, but he did not move. He did not run. He planted his feet and stared back at the monster. "Get out of here," he shouted to the people behind him. "Run!" Some ran. Others were too terrified to move. Hyerin stayed frozen, staring at her brother's back. The Rakthor roared again. The sound was so loud that Daehyun felt it in his chest. Then the beast charged. 6 legs thundered against the floor. The distance between them disappeared in seconds. Daehyun waited. His mind screamed at him to dodge too early, to run, to do anything. But he waited. At the last possible moment, he threw himself to the side. The Rakthor's massive body rushed past him. He swung the plasma cutter in a wide arc. The hot beam of energy sliced into the beast's front leg, cutting through the armored hide. The Rakthor howled in pain and surprise. It stumbled and turned, now facing Daehyun again. Black blood dripped from the wound on its leg. The beast's eyes were filled with rage now. This prey had heard it. This was not supposed to happen. They circled each other slowly. Daehyun kept his body between the Rakthor and his sister. The plasma cutter hummed in his hand. His arms felt weak. He knew he could not survive a real fight. One hit from those claws and he would die. The Rakthor lunged again. This time Daehyun was not fast enough. A massive paw caught him in the chest and sent him flying backward. He crashed into the wall and pain exploded through his body. The plasma cutter fell from his hand and clattered on the floor. The beast moved toward him, ready to finish what it started. Daehyun tried to get up, but his body would not respond fast enough. This was it. This was how he died. Then energy blasts lit up the corridor. Colony security had finally arrived. They fired their weapons at the Rakthor, forcing it to retreat. The beast roared one more time before turning and running back toward the breach in the fence. More security personnel chased after it. Daehyun lay against the wall, gasping for air. His chest burned where the Rakthor had hit him. But he was alive. He looked around and saw Hyeren running toward him, tears streaming down her face. "You idiot," she cried, throwing her arms around him. "You could have died." "You're okay," Daehyun whispered. "That's all that matters." Medical staff arrived and started checking him for injuries. The crowd began to reform, people talking excitedly about what just happened. Most of them were praising the security team who drove the beast away. But in the shadows of the corridor, 3 figures stood watching. They had not run when the alarm sounded. They had stayed and observed everything. They were Velkari, the warrior species that other aliens feared and respected. The tallest one, covered in scars and wearing marks of honor on his chest, watched the human boy being helped to his feet. His eyes were thoughtful. "Did you see that, Tashvar?" one of the other Velkari asked. She was female, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I saw Nalith," Tashvar replied. His voice was deep and rough. The human stood against a Rakthor with nothing but a cutting tool. The third Velkari, younger and eager, made a dismissive sound. "He got lucky," Rivik said. "Any warrior would have done better. Any warrior would have fought," Tashvar said slowly. "But most beings would have run." He stood his ground when he had every reason to flee. He protected the weak ones behind him. The 3 Velkari watched as Daehyun and his sister walked away with the medical team. The boy was limping, clearly in pain, but he kept one arm around his sister's shoulders. "Interesting," Nalith said quietly. "Very interesting," Tashvar agreed. They said nothing more, but something had changed in that moment. The Velkari had noticed the human boy, and when Velkari noticed something, they did not forget. 3 days had passed since the Rakthor attack. Daehyun's chest was still covered in dark bruises, and his ribs hurt when he breathed too deeply. The medical staff had cleared him to return to work, though they told him to take it easy. Taking it easy was not something Daehyun knew how to do. Work kept his mind busy, and a busy mind did not think about dead parents or monsters with yellow eyes. He was in Maintenance Tunnel 7, replacing a damaged power relay. The tunnel was narrow and hot, lit only by the small work light attached to his tool belt. Sweat ran down his back as he worked. The plasma cutter was clipped to his belt, same as always. He had cleaned the black blood off it, but he could not stop thinking about how useless it had felt against the Rakthor. The work was simple and repetitive. Remove the old relay, check the connections, install the new one, test it, move to the next one. His hands knew what to do without his brain needing to pay attention. That was good. It meant he could almost forget about everything else. Almost. Because everywhere he went, they were there. The Velkari. At first, Daehyun thought it was coincidence. He saw one of them in the cafeteria during lunch break. The tall, scarred one with the honor marks. Tashvar, someone had called him. The Velkari was sitting alone eating something that looked like raw meat, but his eyes were watching Daehyun across the room. The next day, Daehyun was repairing an air filter in Section 3. When he looked up, the female Velkari was standing near the entrance. Nalith. She was not doing anything, just standing there, watching. When Daehyun made eye contact, she did not look away. She just stared at him with those sharp predator eyes until he had to look away first. The third Velkari, the younger one called Rivik, appeared outside the residential building where Daehyun and Hyeren lived. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, when Daehyun came home from work. Rivek watched him walk past but said nothing. It was starting to make Daehyun nervous. Other people in the colony noticed too. Whispers followed him through the corridors now. People pointed when they thought he was not looking. Some kept their distance like he was dangerous. Others stared with curiosity. Why are those Velkari following the human kid? Did he do something to offend them? Maybe they're going to challenge him. I heard Velkari kill anyone who disrespects them. Daehyun tried to ignore it all. He kept his head down, did his work, and went home. But ignoring Velkari warriors was like ignoring a storm. You could pretend it was not there, but you always knew it was coming. Hyerin was more direct about it. "They're following you again," she said one evening. They were eating dinner in their small apartment. The food was basic ration packs heated and served on metal trays. It was not delicious, but it was food. "I know," Daehyun said quietly. "Why?" Hyerin put down her fork and looked at him seriously. "What do they want?" "I don't know. You should ask them." "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't want their attention, Hyerin," Daehyun said, his voice harder than he meant it to be. "I just want to work and keep us safe and not think about any of this." Hyerin was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke more softly. "You saved my life. Maybe they respect that." "Velkari don't respect humans," Daehyun said. It was common knowledge in the colony. Velkari were warriors from a culture that valued strength above everything. They looked at most other species as weak. Humans especially. Humans were small and soft and had only been in space for a short time. To Velkari, humans were nothing special. "Maybe you changed their minds," Hyerin suggested. Daehyun did not answer. He did not believe that was possible. 2 more days passed. The Velkari continued their silent observation. Daehyun saw them everywhere, in the marketplace, near the training grounds, outside the maintenance depot. They never spoke to him, never approached, just watched. It was driving him crazy. Other workers started avoiding him. Being noticed by Velkari was dangerous, and people did not want that danger spreading to them. Even his supervisor started giving him assignments in remote parts of the colony, places where fewer people worked. Maybe the supervisor thought he was doing Daehyun a favor. Maybe he just wanted the Velkari attention far away from important areas. Daehyun did not care anymore. He just wanted it to end. On the 6th day after the attack, he was working alone in Maintenance Tunnel 12. It was one of the deepest tunnels in the colony, used for checking the foundation supports. The tunnel was barely wide enough for one person. The air was hot and still. The only sound was the hum of machinery and his own breathing. He was testing a support beam when he heard footsteps behind him. Heavy footsteps. Daehyun turned around slowly. His heart sank. Tashvar stood at the tunnel entrance. The Velkari leader had to duck his head to fit under the low ceiling. His body filled the entire width of the tunnel. There was no way past him. No escape. The tunnel suddenly felt much smaller. Daehyun's hand moved to the plasma cutter on his belt, then stopped. What was he thinking? He could not fight a Velkari warrior. Tashvar was twice his size and covered in scars from battles Daehyun could not even imagine. "Human," Tashvar said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. "My name is Daehyun," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Daehyun," Tashvar repeated. He took a step forward, then another. He moved slowly, like a predator approaching prey. "We witnessed your stand against the Rakthor." "Okay," Daehyun said. He pressed his back against the tunnel wall. There was nowhere to go. "Is that why you've been following me?" "Yes." "Why?" Tashvar stopped a few meters away. In the dim light of the tunnel, his scarred face looked even more intimidating. His eyes were yellow like the Rakthor's eyes, but there was intelligence in them. Cold calculation. "You did what anyone would do," Tashvar said slowly, as if testing the words. "I protected my sister." "Most beings flee when they see a Rakthor," Tashvar continued. "Most die. But you faced death without a pack, without a weapon worth naming, and you held your ground." Daehyun did not know what to say to that. It had not felt brave at the time. It had felt terrifying. He had been sure he was going to die. I was scared, Daehyun admitted. Of course you were, Tashvar said. Fear is natural. Running is natural. But you did not run. That is what caught our attention. I still don't understand. Tashvar studied him for a long moment. The silence stretched between them. Finally, the Velkari spoke again. The Velkari do not give attention lightly. We are warriors. We have fought across 100 worlds. We have seen species rise and fall. Most are weak. Most do not interest us. And I do? Daehyun asked. The absurdity of it made him feel slightly hysterical. He was a maintenance worker. He fixed machines. He was nobody special. You showed something rare, Tashvar said. Something we value. When faced with impossible odds, you did not calculate your chances of survival. You did not think of yourself. You simply stood between danger and those you protect. That is the heart of a warrior. I'm not a warrior. Perhaps not, Tashvar agreed. But you have the spirit of one. The Velkari reached into a pouch on his belt. He pulled out something small and metal. With a quick motion, he tossed it to Daehyun. Daehyun caught it reflexively. It was a token about the size of his palm, made of dark metal with strange symbols carved into it. The metal was warm to the touch. What is this? Daehyun asked. A Velkora, Tashvar said. An acknowledgement. You have been noticed, Daehyun of Earth. Before Daehyun could ask anything else, Tashvar turned and walked away. His heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel until they faded completely. Daehyun was left alone, holding the metal token, confused and worried. That evening, he showed it to Hyerin. Do you know what this means? He asked. Hyerin took the token and examined it carefully. Her eyes went wide. Where did you get this? Tashvar gave it to me. Daehyun, she said slowly. I've been researching Velkari culture. This is serious. What does it mean? Hyerin pulled up her datapad and showed him. She had been reading everything she could find about Velkari traditions. There, on the screen, was an image of the same symbol. It's an invitation, Hyerin explained. The Velkari give these to beings they think might be worthy of respect. It's incredibly rare. They almost never give them to non-Velkari. Worthy of respect for what? To prove yourself. To show you deserve to be acknowledged by their clan. Daehyun felt cold despite the warm air in their apartment. What if I don't want to prove anything? Hyerin bit her lip. According to this, refusing a Velkora is a grave insult. The Velkari take honor very seriously. If you refuse, they might see it as cowardice. Or worse, disrespect. So I have no choice. You always have a choice, Hyerin said. But the choices might not be good ones. Daehyun looked at the token in his hand. It was just a piece of metal, but it felt heavy, like it carried the weight of expectations he never asked for. What am I supposed to do? He asked quietly. Hyerin put her hand on his shoulder. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. You saved my life. Now let me help you with yours. Daehyun nodded slowly. He looked at the token again. The symbols seemed to glow in the dim light. Somewhere in the colony, 3 Velkari warriors were waiting to see what the human boy would do. The attention had been uncomfortable. What came next would be much worse. For 2 days, Daehyun carried the Velkora token in his pocket. It felt like carrying a live grenade. Every time he touched it, he remembered Tashvar's words and Hyerin's warnings. An invitation that could not be refused without consequences. A test he never wanted to take. Hyerin spent those 2 days buried in research. She read everything about Velkari culture that the colony database contained. Most of it was frightening. Stories of their wars, their trials, their brutal honesty. The Velkari did not lie, did not make empty promises, and did not forgive weakness. You need to accept it, Hyerin said on the second evening. They were sitting in their apartment. Daehyun was staring at the wall, trying to think of a way out. There was none. If I accept, I might die in whatever test they give me, Daehyun said. If you refuse, they might kill you anyway. Or worse, they might hurt people around you to punish the insult. That's not fair. Since when is life fair? Hyerin asked. There was no anger in her voice, just tired truth. Their parents had died in an accident that should never have happened. Fair was a word that meant nothing. Daehyun closed his eyes. He was so tired. Tired of being scared. Tired of carrying responsibility he never asked for. But Hyerin was right. He had no good options. If I accept, he said slowly, and if I somehow survive their tests, maybe their respect will protect us. Maybe people will think twice before threatening you. That's what I thought too, Hyerin admitted. Daehyun opened his eyes and looked at his little sister. She was trying to be brave for him, just like he tried to be brave for her. They were all each other had. Okay, he said. I'll accept. The next morning, Daehyun went looking for the Velkari. He did not have to look long. Tashvar was in the colony's central plaza, an open area where different species gathered to trade and socialize. The Velkari leader stood out like a mountain among hills. Other people gave him a wide space. Daehyun walked up to him, his heart pounding. Several aliens stopped to watch. News spread fast in a colony this size. Tashvar, Daehyun said. The Velkari turned. Those yellow eyes focused on him completely. It felt like being examined by a predator deciding if you were prey or something else. Daehyun of Earth, Tashvar acknowledged. I accept, Daehyun said simply. He pulled the Velkora token from his pocket and held it up. Tashvar's scarred face did not change expression, but something shifted in his eyes. Maybe respect, maybe satisfaction. You understand what this means? Tashvar asked. I understand I have to prove myself worthy. You will face trials. Some will test your body. Some will test your mind. Some will test your spirit. If you fail, you will not die, but you will be marked as one who tried and was found lacking. If you succeed, you will earn recognition from the Velkari clan. When do we start? You accept without knowing the details? Tashvar seemed almost amused. Knowing the details won't change my decision, Daehyun said. So why waste time? For the first time, Tashvar made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was more like a growl, but there was humor in it, spoken with courage or foolishness. We will discover which. Tashvar raised his voice so everyone in the plaza could hear. I, Tashvar, clan leader of the Velkari on Vraxis 7, formally present Daehyun of Earth with the trial of proving. He has accepted. Let all beings witness, the crowd murmured. Humans looked shocked. Other aliens seemed skeptical or interested. Nalith and Rivek emerged from the crowd, taking positions on either side of Tashvar. The three Velkari looked at Daehyun together. The trial will begin at dawn tomorrow, Tashvar announced. Prepare yourself as you see fit. Bring nothing. Expect everything. With that, the three Velkari walked away, leaving Daehyun standing in the plaza with everyone staring at him. He felt naked under their gazes. Exposed. Some people looked at him with pity, like he was already dead. Others looked curious. A few humans looked proud. Daehyun just felt scared. News of his acceptance spread through the colony within hours. By afternoon, everyone knew. The human maintenance worker had accepted a Velkari trial of proving. It was unprecedented. Humans whispered about it in break rooms. Other species debated what it meant. The colony administrator, a nervous Quellan named Bilex, actually came to find Daehyun while he was working. Is it true? Bilex asked. He had 4 arms and compound eyes that blinked independently. You accepted their trial? Yes. Do you understand the opportunity this represents? Bilex's voice went high with excitement. If you succeed, this could be incredible for human-Velkari relations. The mining consortium would be very interested in documenting this. We could record the trials, broadcast them. No, Daehyun interrupted. But think of the publicity. I said no, Daehyun repeated, his voice harder. This is not a show. I'm not doing this for publicity or relations or any of that. I'm doing it because I have to. Leave me alone. Bilex backed away, all 4 hands raised in a placating gesture. Of course. As you wish. When Bilex was gone, Daehyun's supervisor came over. The supervisor was human, an older man named Taejin who had worked on mining colonies for 30 years. That was stupid, kid, Taejin said bluntly. Which part? All of it. Accepting the trial. Refusing the publicity. You could have made this work for you. I don't care about making things work for me, Daehyun said. I just want to keep my sister safe. Taejin was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Your parents would be proud of you. Probably terrified, but proud. The words hit Daehyun harder than he expected. He had to look away so Taejin would not see the tears trying to form. That evening, Hyerin helped him prepare. There was not much to prepare since Tashvar said to bring nothing, but Hieren insisted on making sure he was ready mentally. Get a good sleep, she said. I don't think I can sleep. Try anyway. Your body needs rest. What if I fail? Then you fail, Hieren said firmly. But you'll fail knowing you tried. That's better than living with refusing. Daehyun wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He had made his choice. Now he had to see it through. He did not sleep well that night. When he did sleep, he dreamed of yellow eyes and black claws and his parents' faces disappearing into darkness. Dawn came too quickly. Daehyun dressed in simple work clothes. Sturdy pants, a plain shirt, boots that were worn but reliable. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a tired teenager who was trying to be braver than he felt. Hieren was awake already. She had made breakfast, though neither of them had much appetite. Whatever happens, she said, I'm proud of you. Don't say that yet. I haven't done anything. You've already done more than most people would. They walked together to the colony's training grounds, which were outside the main buildings. The grounds were mostly empty desert sand with some exercise equipment and marked areas for combat practice. The sun was just rising, turning the sky from dark purple to orange. The Velkari were already there. All three of them. Tashvar stood in the center. Nalith was checking some equipment. Rivek was stretching, his muscles moving under his scaled skin. There were also spectators. Word had spread and dozens of colonists had come to watch. They stood at a safe distance, quiet and curious. Daehyun saw other humans in the crowd. He saw his supervisor Taejin. He saw Administrator Bilex with recording equipment that he was clearly trying to hide. Daehyun walked forward, leaving Hieren with the spectators. She squeezed his hand once before letting go. He stopped in front of Tashvar. I'm here, Daehyun said. So you are, Tashvar replied. The trial of proving consists of 5 tests. Each test reveals something about your character. You do not need to win every test. You need to show us who you are when pushed beyond your limits. Do you understand? I understand. First test begins now, Tashvar said. He gestured to the desert beyond the colony. You will run 30 kilometers through the desert. The temperature will reach 50 degrees. You will carry this. Nalith brought forward a pack. It looked heavy. 25 kilograms, she said. Water is in the pack. You may drink as needed, but you may not stop moving until you reach the marker stone. We will run with you. Daehyun looked at the desert. 30 kilometers. In heat that could kill, carrying extra weight, with Velkari warriors beside him the entire time. This tests endurance, Tashvar explained. Not just of body, but of will. Many beings give up not because they cannot continue, but because they choose not to. We will see what you choose. Daehyun took the pack and put it on. The weight settled on his shoulders like stone. It was heavy, but not impossible. One more thing, Rivek said. There was challenge in his voice. If you quit, the trial ends. You will be marked as one who could not endure. You will not get a second chance. I won't quit, Daehyun said. We will see, Rivek replied. Tashvar raised one clawed hand. When I lower my hand, you begin. Pace yourself. The desert shows no mercy to those who are foolish. Daehyun took a deep breath. His heart was racing. His mouth was already dry. The pack felt heavier with each second. Tashvar's hand dropped. Daehyun started running. Behind him, the 3 Velkari began to run as well. Their longer legs carried them easily. They did not struggle with the weight or the heat. They were testing him, watching how long he could last before breaking. The sun rose higher. The desert heat grew. Sweat soaked through Daehyun's clothes within the first kilometer. His legs burned. The pack seemed to gain weight with every step, but he kept running. In his mind, he saw his parents. He saw Hieren. He saw the Rakthor's yellow eyes. He kept running. This was only the first test. There were 4 more to come. The desert tried to kill him. That was the only way Daehyun could describe it. The heat was not just hot, it was aggressive. It pressed down on him from above and radiated up from the sand below. The air itself felt like it was burning his lungs. Sweat poured from his body, soaking his clothes completely within the first 5 kilometers. The pack on his back grew heavier with each step. 25 kilograms felt like 50. His shoulders ached. His back screamed. His legs were made of lead. But the Velkari ran beside him without effort. Tashvar maintained an easy pace on his right. The clan leader's breathing was steady, his movements fluid. He did not even seem to notice the heat. Nalith ran on Daehyun's left, her sharp eyes constantly watching him. Rivek ran behind, and Daehyun could feel the young warrior's gaze burning into his back. They were not just running with him. They were testing him, watching for the moment he would break. At 10 kilometers, Daehyun's vision started to blur. He reached for the water tube in his pack and drank. The water was warm, but it helped. He forced his legs to keep moving. "You are struggling," Nalith observed. Her voice was not mocking, just stating fact. "Yes," Daehyun gasped. There was no point in lying. "Why do you continue?" "Because I said I would." "That is not a good reason," Rivek said from behind. "Pride makes warriors do stupid things." "It's not pride," Daehyun managed between breaths. "It's commitment." At 15 kilometers halfway through, Daehyun had to stop thinking. Thinking took energy he did not have. He entered a mental space where only the next step mattered. Right foot, left foot, breathe, right foot, left foot, breathe. His mind drifted. He thought about his mother, who had worked 18-hour shifts in the mines without complaint. He thought about his father, who had laughed even when things were terrible. They had endured. They had survived, until they did not. But they had taught him how to keep going. At 20 kilometers, something changed. The pain did not go away, but Daehyun stopped fighting it. He accepted it as part of his new reality. His body was suffering. That was just a fact now. He could either stop or continue. Stopping would end the pain, but also end the trial. Continuing meant more pain, but also progress. He chose progress. "He has found his rhythm," Tashvar said to the others. "Humans are weaker than most species," Rivek argued. "He will collapse soon." "Perhaps," Nalith said. "Or perhaps we underestimate them." At 25 kilometers, with only 5 left to go, Daehyun's legs finally gave out. He fell forward into the sand. The hot ground burned his hands. The pack seemed to pin him down. His entire body was shaking. The Velkari stopped running. They stood around him, waiting. This was the moment. He could quit now. No one would blame him. He had run 25 kilometers in brutal heat with a heavy pack. That was more than most humans could do, but quitting meant failure. Daehyun pushed himself up. His arms trembled. His legs did not want to support his weight. But he stood. He took one step, then another. "Impressive," Tashvar said quietly. They resumed running. The last 5 kilometers were pure torture. Daehyun's body was beyond exhaustion. He was running on will alone, but he did not stop. When the marker stone finally appeared in the distance, Daehyun felt a surge of emotion so strong it almost made him cry. He had made it. He stumbled the last 100 meters and collapsed at the base of the stone. His vision went dark around the edges. He could hear his heart beating too fast. His breathing was ragged and desperate. Medical staff that had followed in a vehicle rushed over. They checked his vital signs, gave him water, started cooling him down. Daehyun barely noticed. He was too exhausted to care. "He finished," Nalith said. She sounded surprised. "Not first," Rivek pointed out. "Any Velkari child could have done it faster." "But he finished," Tashvar repeated. "That is what matters in this test. Not speed. Endurance, the human endured." They let Daehyun rest for 2 hours. He drank water, ate some food, and lay in the shade of the medical vehicle. His body was completely drained, but his mind felt strangely clear. He had passed the first test. The second test came that same afternoon. Daehyun could barely stand, but the Velkari did not care about fairness. They cared about limits. They brought him to a training arena back at the colony. A crowd had gathered again, even larger this time. Word had spread that the human had finished the desert run. "Second test," Tashvar announced. "Combat instinct." They blindfolded Daehyun with a thick black cloth. The world went dark. "3 of us will attack you with training weapons," Nalith explained. "The weapons will hurt but not kill. You must defend yourself without sight. You have only your other senses. The test lasts 5 minutes. Survive and you pass." "Wait," Daehyun said. His tired mind was trying to process this. "I can't see. How am I supposed to—" Something hit him hard in the back. He stumbled forward. Pain bloomed across his spine. "The test has begun." Rivek's voice came from somewhere to his left. Daehyun tried to focus. He could not see, but he could hear. He could feel air movement. He had to use everything else. Another strike came from his right. He tried to dodge, but was too slow. The weapon caught his shoulder. It felt like a metal rod wrapped in padding. Painful, but not lethal. You are too slow, Nalith's voice said. She was circling him. Daehyun forced his tired body to move. He could not just stand still. That made him an easy target. He started moving in a circle, trying to track sounds, a whoosh of air behind him. He ducked. The weapon missed by inches. Better, Tashvar said. They attacked in a pattern, not all at once, but one after another. It was designed to keep him off balance. Daehyun took hit after hit. His body, already exhausted from the run, was accumulating bruises on top of bruises, but he started to learn. He learned that Ryvek struck fast and pulled back quickly. He learned that Nalith moved almost silently, but her weapon made a specific sound when she swung. He learned that Tashvar was more direct, his larger body creating more air movement. Daehyun stopped trying to avoid every hit. Instead, he focused on avoiding the worst ones. He kept moving, never staying in one place. He used the walls of the arena to orient himself. When he heard an attack coming, he rolled toward the sound instead of away. This confused his attackers because most prey runs away from danger. 3 minutes in, Daehyun did something unexpected. When he heard Nalith approaching, he did not dodge. Instead, he swung his arm in a wide arc where he thought she would be. He connected. His fist hit something solid. He heard Nalith make a surprise sound and stepped back. The crowd gasped. The human struck back, someone in the crowd whispered. For the remaining 2 minutes, Daehyun stopped just defending. He started counterattacking. He missed more than he hit, and he still took plenty of strikes. But he was fighting back. When the 5 minutes ended, Daehyun pulled off the blindfold. He was breathing hard. Blood was dripping from his nose. His entire body was one big bruise. But he was still standing. Nalith was rubbing her arm where Daehyun had hit her. She looked at him with new eyes. You adapted, she said. In the middle of battle, you changed your strategy. That is rare. You don't fight with skill, Tashvar added. You fight with survival instinct, admirable. 2 tests done, Ryvek said. His voice was less hostile now. 3 remain. They gave Daehyun 1 day to recover. Medical staff treated his injuries, gave him medicine for the pain, and told him he was insane. He agreed with them. The 3rd test was different. It was not physical. They took Daehyun to a command center simulation room. Inside was a holographic display showing a section of the colony. 3rd test, Tashvar explained. Wisdom under pressure. A breach has occurred. The situation is shown on the display. You have limited resources. You must decide who to save and how to deploy your assets. You have 5 minutes to make your decisions. Daehyun studied the display. It showed a breach in Section 6 of the colony. Atmosphere was venting. People were trapped in different areas. He had 3 rescue teams, limited medical supplies, and not enough time to save everyone. The display showed exactly who was in each area. Engineers, families, medical staff, the elderly, children. This is impossible, Daehyun said. I can't save everyone. Correct, Nalith said. That is why it is a test. What do you prioritize? Daehyun's first instinct was to save the children, but then he thought deeper. If he saved only children, they would be orphans without the parents who could care for them. If he saved only the strong, he would be no better than the species who saw life as only valuable when it was useful. He made his decisions. He sent 1 team to rescue the medical staff because they could save others afterward. He sent another team to rescue families together, keeping parents and children united. He sent the 3rd team to rescue the engineers who could repair the breach and prevent more deaths. He deliberately did not prioritize only the young or only the strong. He tried to think about the community that would exist after the crisis. When he explained his reasoning, the Velkari were silent for a long moment. Most beings prioritize the strong, Tashvar finally said. They save those who can fight another day. You chose differently. I chose the pack, Daehyun said. That's what you keep talking about, right? Pack survival, not individual survival. You think like a leader, Nalith said quietly. Not like a warrior. Interesting, they came for him at dawn. Daehyun had barely slept. His body was a collection of bruises, cuts, and exhausted muscles. 4 tests had pushed him further than he thought possible. Now there was 1 more. The 5th test. The Velkari had been mysterious about it, which made Daehyun more nervous than all the physical trials combined. Tashvar, Nalith, and Ryvek arrived at his apartment without warning. Their faces were serious, more serious than usual. It is time for the final test, Tashvar said. What is it? Daehyun asked. His voice was rough from exhaustion. You will see. Come with us, Hiran was still asleep. Daehyun left her a message saying he would be back soon. He hoped that was true. They led him deep into the colony's medical center to a section he had never seen before. Private rooms for critical cases. The air smelled of antiseptic and machines. The lights were dim. Everything was quiet except for the hum of life support equipment. They stopped outside a sealed door. Before you enter, Tashvar said, know that this test is different from the others. We tested your endurance. We tested your instinct. We tested your wisdom and courage. Now we test something deeper. What? Daehyun asked. His heart was starting to beat faster. Your values, Nalith said quietly. What you truly believe when everything is at stake. They opened the door. Inside was a medical room with 2 beds. On one bed lay Hiran unconscious. She was connected to monitors and IVs. Her face was pale. On the other bed lay a young Velkari, also unconscious and hooked to similar equipment. Daehyun's world tilted. What did you do to her? His voice came out as a growl. Rage flooded through him, burning away exhaustion and fear. Peace, Tashvar said, holding up one hand. Your sister is sedated but unharmed. She is sleeping, nothing more. We needed her here for the test. You had no right, we had every right, Tashvar interrupted, his voice hard. You accepted the trial. The trial tests all aspects of who you are. This is the final test. Between the 2 beds was a medical pod. Inside the pod was a single dose of medicine in a sealed container. During the night, Nalith explained, both your sister and Rivek's brother contracted Vryxian fever. It is a disease that comes from the desert. Without treatment, it is often fatal. Daehyun looked at Rivek. The young warrior's face was rigid, but Daehyun could see tension in every line of his body. That was his brother lying there. We have 1 dose of the cure, Tashvar continued. Only 1. It takes days to synthesize more, and the fever acts quickly. You must choose who receives it. Your sister or our warrior. The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors. Daehyun felt like he was falling. Everything he had endured for the past few days, all the pain and exhaustion, was nothing compared to this moment. They were asking him to choose between Hiran and a stranger. Between his only family and someone else's brother. This is insane, Daehyun whispered. This is the test, Tashvar said. We Velkari believe that true character is revealed in impossible choices. When you cannot have both, what do you choose? Your blood or the pack? Your family or the greater good? There is no greater good here, Daehyun said. His hands were shaking. You're just asking me to choose who dies. Yes, Nalith said simply. Daehyun looked at Hiran's pale face. She was his responsibility, his sister, his last connection to his parents. Everything he did was to keep her safe. How could he choose anyone over her? But then he looked at Rivek. The young Velkari warrior was watching him intensely. That was his brother in the bed. Rivek probably felt the same desperate love and responsibility that Daehyun felt. What are their chances without treatment? Daehyun asked. His voice was hollow. Rivek's brother has a 30% chance of survival without the cure. Nalith answered. And Hiran? 20%. The numbers hit Daehyun like physical blows. 20%. Hiran's chances were worse. If he chose logically, thinking only of survival odds, he should save Rivek's brother. But logic did not account for love. Logic did not account for the promise he had made to his parents to protect his sister. Daehyun walked closer to Hiran's bed. He looked down at her peaceful face. She trusted him completely. She believed he would always protect her. I can't, Daehyun said. His voice broke. I can't choose. You must, Tashvar said. Not unkindly but firmly. No, Daehyun said. Tears were starting to form in his eyes. If I choose Hiran, Rivek's brother dies and it's my fault. If I choose the warrior, Hiran dies and I've failed everything I promised. There's no right answer. There is no right answer, Nalith agreed. Only your answer. That is what we need to see. Daehyun stood there, trapped between 2 beds, 2 lives, 2 impossible futures. His mind raced through options. Could he refuse to choose? Could he fight the Velkari and steal the medicine? Could he? No, there was no way out. Only through. He thought about what the tests had taught him. Endurance, instinct, wisdom, courage, and now values. The Velkari kept talking about the pack, about thinking beyond himself. Every test had been about pushing past his individual limits to consider something larger. Daehyun closed his eyes. This was the cruelest lesson of all. Give the cure, he said slowly, each word tearing out of him, to whoever has the best chance of survival. Rivek's brother, Nalith confirmed. Yes. Daehyun opened his eyes. Tears were running down his face now. He did not care. If only one can survive, then save the one most likely to live. That's what makes sense. He walked to Hyeron's bedside and took her hand. It was warm and small in his. I'm sorry, he whispered to her. I'm so sorry. You choose logic over love? Rivek asked. His voice was strange, like he could not believe what he was hearing. I choose, Daehyun said, his voice shaking. What gives someone the best chance to live, even if it destroys me? He collapsed to his knees beside Hyeron's bed. His whole body was shaking. He had just sentenced his sister to a 20% chance. He had chosen a stranger's brother over his own family. The weight of that choice was crushing him. He heard movement behind him. Footsteps. Someone approaching the medical pod. Daehyun could not watch. He pressed his forehead against Hyeron's bed and closed his eyes. He waited for the sound of the medicine being administered to the Velkari warrior. Waited for the moment his sister's fate would be sealed. But the sound did not come. Instead, he heard Nalith's voice, close to him. Look up, Daehyun. He raised his head slowly. Nalith was standing there with the medicine still sealed in its container. Behind her, medical staff were entering the room. They were carrying 2 more doses. What? Daehyun's mind could not process what he was seeing. There was always enough medicine, Tashvar said. He stepped forward, his expression unreadable. The disease is real. Both your sister and Rivek's brother did contract it during the night. But we had enough cure for both. We only told you there was 1 dose. Rage exploded in Daehyun's chest. He stood up, his fists clenched. You lied? We tested, Tashvar corrected. We needed to see what you would choose when faced with impossible odds. When logic fought love, when your own values were turned against you, the medical staff began administering the medicine to both patients. Daehyun watched, his mind spinning. Hyeron would be fine. She was never in danger of dying. This whole thing was a test. You made me choose, Daehyun said. His voice was filled with pain and anger. You made me think I was killing her. Yes, Nalith said. Because life will make you choose. War makes you choose. Disaster makes you choose. We needed to know if you could make the hard choice even when it broke you. This was cruel, Daehyun said. Yes, Tashvar agreed. Because reality is cruel. Because being a leader means making choices that haunt you. We needed to see if you would break under that weight or if you would bend. Daehyun looked at Rivek. The young warrior had tears in his eyes too. You knew, Daehyun said. You knew your brother was safe. I knew he was sick, Rivek said quietly. But I did not know about the test until you were brought here. I stood here thinking you would choose your sister. Any being would choose their own blood. But you chose based on who could survive. You chose my brother. His voice broke on the last words. I almost lost everything, Daehyun said. He felt empty. Drained of everything. You were willing to lose everything, Tashvar said. For what you believed was right. That is what we needed to see. You did not just think of the pack in theory. When pushed to the absolute edge, when your heart was being torn out, you still chose based on wisdom rather than selfishness. I don't feel wise, Daehyun said. I feel sick. Good, Nalith said. If this choice was easy, it would mean nothing. Your pain proves your values are real. They let Daehyun sit with Hyeron until she woke up. When she opened her eyes, confused and groggy, he held her hand and told her she was safe. He did not tell her about the choice he had made. He was not sure he ever would. Rivek approached him later, after his brother had also woken and received the full treatment. You saved my brother, Rivek said. The medicine saved him, Daehyun replied. No, your choice saved him. You could have chosen differently. Host would have. Rivek extended his arm, the Velkari gesture of respect. I was wrong about you. About humans. You have honor that runs deeper than I understood. Daehyun took his arm. They stood there for a moment. 2 young beings who had both been tested by forces beyond their control. All 5 tests are complete, Tashvar announced. He, Nalith, and Rivek stood together. The entire colony gathered in the central plaza. It was the largest assembly Daehyun had ever seen on Vraxis 7. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the open space. Humans stood in nervous clusters. Other aliens watched with curiosity or skepticism. The mining consortium administrators were there, including Bilex with his recording equipment. Security personnel ringed the crowd, unsure what to expect. At the center of the plaza, a raised platform had been constructed overnight. The Velkari stood on that platform, visible to everyone. Tashvar in the middle with Nalith and Rivek flanking him. They wore ceremonial armor, dark metal that caught the morning sun. They looked like warriors from legend. Daehyun stood at the base of the platform with Hyerin beside him. His sister held his hand tightly. She was still weak from the fever but had insisted on being there. Medical staff hovered nearby, ready to help if needed. "Are you scared?" Hyerin whispered. "Terrified," Daehyun admitted. The crowd was loud with conversation and speculation. Then Tashvar raised one clawed hand and silence fell like a dropped stone. The Velkari leader's presence commanded attention without words. "We are Velkari," Tashvar began. His voice carried across the plaza without amplification. "Across the galaxy, beings know us as warriors. We are born to combat. We live by codes of honor that other species find harsh. We do not forgive weakness. We do not respect cowardice. We do not give our acknowledgement lightly." He paused, letting his words settle over the crowd. When Arakthor breached this colony, we watched a human boy stand between the beast and those he protected. We watched him face certain death without a proper weapon. We watched him refuse to run. This caught our attention. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone had heard the story by now, but hearing it from Tashvar made it real in a new way. The Velkari gave this human, Daehyun of Earth, a Velkora token. An invitation to prove himself worthy of our respect. Such invitations are rare. They are given to non-Velkari almost never. Nalith stepped forward. We gave Daehyun 5 trials. The first tested his endurance. He ran 30 kilometers through desert heat carrying weight that would burden a warrior. He was exhausted before he started, yet he finished without complaint. Rivek spoke next, his voice carrying respect that had not been there before. The second trial tested combat instinct. We attacked him while he was blindfolded. He adapted during the fight, learning our patterns and striking back. He showed survival instinct that cannot be taught. The third trial, Nalith continued, tested wisdom. We gave him an impossible scenario where he could not save everyone. He chose to think of the community rather than just the strongest or just the youngest. He thought like a leader. The fourth trial tested courage, Tashvar said. He faced the same beast that had nearly killed him. He controlled his fear and controlled the encounter. He proved that facing fear once had taught him how to face it again. The crowd was completely silent now. Every being was focused on the platform. The fifth trial, Tashvar said, his voice growing softer but somehow more intense, was the cruelest. We asked Daehyun to choose between his only family and a stranger. Between love and logic, between his heart and his values. Daehyun felt Hyerin's hand tighten in his. She had finally learned what the fifth trial had been. He had told her that morning. He chose, Tashvar continued, based on who had the best chance of survival. He chose to save another's family over his own. He made a decision that was destroying him from inside because he believed it was right. That is strength that goes deeper than muscle or weapons. Tashvar looked directly at Daehyun. Approach the platform. Daehyun's legs felt weak, but he climbed the steps. Hyerin waited at the bottom, watching with pride and worry mixed on her face. Standing on the platform, Daehyun could see the entire crowd. Thousands of eyes watching him. He saw other humans looking at him like he was something new. He saw aliens of species he could not name, all focused on this moment. Tashvar moved closer. From his belt he pulled a small container. Inside was dark ink that seemed to shimmer. Among the Velkari, Tashvar explained to the crowd, we mark warriors who prove themselves with ink that bonds to the skin permanently. It is a sign of honor. A warrior who bears this mark is recognized by any Velkari anywhere in the galaxy. He looked at Daehyun. We have decided. You are worthy. The words were simple, but their impact was enormous. Gasps went through the crowd. Some aliens looked shocked. The humans looked stunned. Even Bilex dropped his recording equipment. Extend your arm, Tashvar commanded. Daehyun held out his right arm, palm down. His hand was shaking slightly. Tashvar took Daehyun's forearm in his much larger hand. The Velkari's grip was firm but careful. With his other hand, Tashvar applied the ink in swift practice motions. The ink burned as it touched skin, bonding at a cellular level. Daehyun gritted his teeth but did not pull away. When Tashvar finished, there was a symbol on Daehyun's forearm. It looked like a blade crossed with a shield, surrounded by 3 marks. "This is the mark of a proven warrior," Tashvar announced. "Anyone who sees this will know that this human has been tested by Velkari standards and found worthy. He is under our protection. Any who harm him answer to our clan." Nalith stepped forward next. She held a weapon, a blade about as long as Daehyun's forearm. The handle was wrapped in dark leather and the blade gleamed with a strange metal that seemed to shift color in the light. "This is a Velkari blade," Nalith said. "It is ceremonial but fully functional. It has been carried by warriors for 3 generations. We gift it to you as a symbol of what you have proven." She placed the blade in Daehyun's hands. It was heavier than it looked, perfectly balanced. The weight felt significant, like holding responsibility made physical. Then Rivek approached, the young Velkari who had been most skeptical, most hostile. He stopped in front of Daehyun and extended his arm. "You saved my brother," Rivek said loudly enough for the crowd to hear. "When you could have chosen your own blood, you chose based on wisdom. You chose him. I was wrong about humans. Wrong about you. I name you brother." He clasped Daehyun's arm, the one with the fresh ink still burning. The gesture was formal and binding. "Brother," Rivek repeated. The word echoed across the plaza. A Velkari calling a human brother. It was unprecedented. Tashvar faced the crowd again. "Let this be known across Vraxis 7 and beyond. Daehyun of Earth has proven himself. He carries our mark. He wields our blade. He is called brother by our warriors." The Velkari recognize him. The crowd exploded. Humans erupted in cheers and shouts. Other species reacted with a mix of emotions. Some looked impressed, others jealous, some confused. But everyone was reacting. Daehyun stood on the platform holding the blade, his arm burning with fresh ink, and felt overwhelmed. He had not wanted glory. He had just wanted to protect his sister. But somehow he had become something else. The ceremony continued. Other Velkari warriors who had been working in the colony came forward one by one to acknowledge Daehyun. Each clasped his arm briefly, accepting him as Tashvar had declared. Finally, it was over. Daehyun was allowed to step down from the platform. Hyren threw her arms around him, crying and laughing at the same time. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it." "I don't feel like I did anything special," Daehyun said honestly. "That's why it is special," a voice said. Daehyun turned to see Tashvar had followed him down from the platform. The Velkari leader looked at him with something that might have been approval. "True warriors do not seek glory," Tashvar said. "They do what must be done because it must be done. You embody that principle." "I'm not a warrior," Daehyun protested. "I'm just someone who didn't run." "That is what warriors are," Nalith said, joining them. "Beings who stand when others flee, who endure when others break, who choose the hard path because it is right." Other humans began approaching, wanting to congratulate Daehyun or touch the blade or see the mark on his arm. He felt suffocated by the attention. This was exactly what he had not wanted. Rivek seemed to sense his discomfort. The young Velkari growled softly and the crowd backed up. "Give him space. He has earned rest." The crowd respected the Velkari's command. Slowly people began to disperse, though they kept looking back at Daehyun. Supervisor Taejin approached, his old face creased with emotion. "Your parents would have been proud." "So proud." Daehyun felt his throat tighten. "Thank you." "But also terrified," Taejin added with a slight smile. "What you went through would give any parent nightmares." Administrator Bilex came over, all 4 arms gesturing excitedly. "This is incredible for colony relations. The consortium will want to—" "No," Daehyun said firmly. "But surely," I said no. "I'm not a symbol for the consortium to use. I'm just a maintenance worker who wants to go back to fixing machines." Bilex looked like he wanted to argue, but Tashvar's presence behind Daehyun made the administrator reconsider. Of course. As you wish." As the plaza emptied, Daehyun stood with Hyeren, the 3 Velkari, and a few close humans. The sun was higher now, warm but not harsh. "What happens now?" Daehyun asked. "Now," Tashvar said, "you live. You work, you protect your sister, but you do so with our mark on your arm and our recognition behind you. The galaxy will view you differently. Some with respect. Some with envy. Some with suspicion. I just want a normal life." That is no longer possible. Daehyun stood in the training grounds outside the colony. the early morning sun warming his face. Sweat dripped down his back despite the cool desert air. He held the Velkari blade in his hand, the weight familiar now. Across from him, Rivek circled slowly, his own training blade ready. "Your stance is better," Rivek commented. "But you still favor your right side too much." Daehyun adjusted his position. 6 months of training with the Velkari had changed him. His body was stronger, covered in lean muscle earned through countless hours of practice. His reflexes were sharper. His confidence was different, not arrogant but solid, built on actual skill rather than bravado. But more than his body had changed. Rivek attacked without warning. Daehyun blocked the strike and countered smoothly. Their blades rang together in the quiet morning. They moved through combinations that had been drilled into Daehyun's memory through endless repetition. "Block, counter, step, strike." "Good," Rivek said, stepping back. "Much better than 6 months ago when you could barely hold the blade properly." "I had a good teacher," Daehyun replied, slightly out of breath. "You had a demanding teacher," Rivek corrected with a hint of humor. "There is a difference." Other figures emerged from the colony. More beings coming to train. The Velkari had started offering combat and survival training to any colonist who wanted to learn. At first, only a few humans had been brave enough to join. Then others saw the value. Now dozens of beings from multiple species trained with the Velkari every morning. It had become something unexpected. A bridge between species. Nalith approached, observing several human trainees working through basic defense drills. She moved between them, correcting stances and offering advice. The Velkari warrior, who had once seemed so intimidating, now worked patiently with colonists who could barely hold a training weapon. "The colony has changed," Daehyun said to Rivek. "Everything changed," Rivek agreed. "You changed it." Daehyun was not sure he accepted that, but he could not deny the evidence. The Velkari no longer kept to themselves. They interacted with other species more freely. Other aliens treated humans with new respect, or at least new curiosity. The clear divisions between species had blurred, and it had started with a scared teenager standing between a monster and his sister. Tashvar arrived at the training grounds, his scarred presence commanding immediate attention from everyone. He surveyed the trainees with a critical eye, then nodded with satisfaction. "Good turnout today," he said. "Combat readiness across the colony has improved significantly." "It helps that we haven't had another Rakthor breach," Nalith pointed out. "True," Tashvar agreed, "but the perimeter fence has been reinforced. Security protocols have been updated, and most importantly, beings no longer panic and scatter at the first sign of danger. They know how to respond." He looked at Daehyun. "This was your impact. By standing your ground that day, you showed others that fighting back was possible. By surviving our trials, you proved that growth was possible. Others wanted to follow that example." "I didn't mean to start anything," Daehyun said. "The best changes are never planned," Tashvar replied. "They simply happen because one being chooses to act rather than accept." A young human woman approached nervously. Daehyun recognized her as Minji, someone who worked in the colony's hydroponics section. She had started training 2 months ago. "Excuse me," Minji said quietly. "Daehyun, could you help me with the defensive drill? I keep getting it wrong." "Sure," Daehyun said. He spent the next hour helping Minji and several others work through basic techniques. It felt strange to be teaching when 6 months ago he had known nothing. But that was part of what he had learned from the Velkari. Knowledge was meant to be shared. Strength was meant to protect others, not elevate yourself. When the morning training session ended, Daehyun walked back toward the colony. His body was tired in a good way, muscles pleasantly exhausted from work. He had just entered the main corridor when his communication device beeped. It was a message from Hiran. "Come to the school. Something you need to see." Daehyun changed direction, heading toward the education center. When he arrived, he found Hiran in one of the classrooms. She was not alone. There were a dozen young beings, mix of species, sitting at desks. On the display screen at the front of the room was a presentation about cultural exchange. "What's this?" Daehyun asked. "My project," Hiran said with barely contained excitement. "After what happened with you and the Velkari, I realized how little we know about each other. Different species living side by side but not really understanding each other. So I started this program, Cultural Exchange Classes." She gestured to the students. "We have young beings from 7 different species. They meet twice a week to share stories about their cultures, their traditions, their ways of thinking. It's helping break down barriers. One of the students, a young alien with blue scales, spoke up. We never talked to each other before. Now we're friends. Another student, human, added, I used to be scared of anyone who looked different. Now I understand they're just beings like me. Daehyun felt something warm expand in his chest. While he had been learning to fight, his sister had been building something else. Something maybe more important. This is incredible, Hyerin. You inspired it, she said. You showed that different species can respect each other. I wanted to help that grow. As Daehyun left the education center, he thought about how one moment could ripple outward in unexpected ways. He had stood against a beast to protect his sister. That action had caught Velkari attention. The trials had proven something to the warriors. The recognition had changed how others viewed humans. And now young beings were learning to see past species differences. All from one moment of refusing to run. That evening, the colony alarm sounded. Daehyun was in his apartment when he heard it. His body tensed immediately, old fear rising. But this time was different. He was not frozen by panic. He had training now. Purpose. He grabbed the Velkari blade and ran toward the source of the alarm. His communication device provided updates. Perimeter breach in Section 9. Multiple contacts. Rakthor pack. When he arrived at Section 9, he found organized chaos instead of panic. Security teams were in position. Velkari warriors were coordinating defensive lines, and dozens of colonists who had been training were moving to support positions. Tashvar was directing operations from a central point. He saw Daehyun arrive and nodded in acknowledgement. Pack of 6 Rakthor, Tashvar reported. They broke through the fence in a coordinated attack. Smarter than usual. We need to drive them back before they reach residential areas. What do you need me to do? Daehyun asked. Take a team to the east flank. Keep the beasts from circling around. Hrevek and Nalith are already engaging the main group. Daehyun looked around and saw several humans and other aliens who had been training. They looked scared but determined. You heard him. East flank. Let's move. They ran together toward the breach point. Daehyun's mind was clear, focused. This was what all the training had been for. Not glory, not honor, this protecting people. They reached the east side just as 2 Rakthor tried to break through. The beasts were huge, their armored hides gleaming in the setting sun. Yellow eyes fixed on the defensive line. Daehyun did not feel the same paralyzing fear as before. He was still afraid, but fear was familiar now. It was something he had learned to work with rather than be controlled by. Stay in formation, he called to the team. We just need to hold them until security can support. The Rakthor charged. Daehyun and his team met them with coordinated defense. They had practiced this. Energy weapons fired in controlled bursts. Beings with melee training used barriers to create choke points. It was not perfect, but it was effective. One Rakthor got too close. Daehyun stepped forward and used his blade, striking at the beast's legs like he had been taught. The blade cut through the armored hide. The beast roared and stumbled. Drive them back, Daehyun shouted. The team pushed forward. The Rakthor, surprised by organized resistance, began to retreat. More security forces arrived, adding their firepower. Within minutes, the beasts were driven away from the colony back into the desert. When the all-clear sounded, Daehyun looked at his team. They were breathing hard, some were injured, but they were alive. And they had held. Minji, the young woman from hydroponics, was staring at her hands in disbelief. We did it. We actually fought them off. You trained for this, Daehyun said. You were ready. Back at the central coordination point, Tashvar was assessing damage. Minor injuries, some fence repairs needed, but no deaths. It could have been much worse. Your team held the east flank well, Tashvar said when Daehyun reported in. They fought well, Daehyun replied. Everyone did. Nalith joined them, wiping black blood from her blade. The colony responded better than it did 6 months ago. Instead of panic, we had organization. Instead of victims, we had defenders. That is the difference between prey and pack, Tashvar said. He looked at Daehyun. You have helped create that difference. Later that night, after medical checks and reports, Daehyun sat with Hyerin in their apartment. Both were exhausted. Hyerin had been in the shelter during the attack, safe but worried. You're getting good at this, she said. At what? Being what you never wanted to be.